Welcome, friends. Welcome back. I'm so excited to introduce you to Marisa. She is a beautiful soul, a wonderful intuitive, a somatic body healer, and she is here to talk to us about all things intuitive and spiritual and somatic body, all of the things. I am so excited for you to meet her. So, you know me, Abigail, from Breath of Life, and I'm so excited. Once again, let's jump right on in. Marisa, how are you?
I'm doing good. I feel a calmness like that blanketed us as we like approached this call almost. It was like from chaos to a blanket of calm. So I'm
I
doing good.
agree. I was finishing up my meditation and I felt that too. I just like put my hand to my heart and I was like, I'm channeling Miss Marisa. I know it.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your journey. I always start off with my guests to just tell us a little bit about you. How did you get to where you are? How did you figure out you're an intuitive? What is it that you do and how do you use intuition in your practice?
Yeah. So I would say it's all happened from a great awakening from the darkness, almost like the deepness of um like a dark childhood turned into a rebellious teenage years into my 20s when I was just like, I feel like I wasn't even awake at those times. So it was almost as if like I needed that space and time to have these experiences so that I could turn on this wisdom and this knowledge that I carry with me now. So it didn't happen until I got into an abusive relationship in my 20s. I had already had my daughter, and she was about maybe 5, 6 years old. And I was in this relationship, and it was really physically and mentally abusive. And I just kind of, I think at a certain point, I shook myself awake, like almost like literally. He went to jail, and I finally found peace and solitude away from this person. And I could recreate my daughter and my life again. And that's when I had to kind of come face to face with myself and why was I in this relationship to begin with and what got me there, and going through all of those revelations and those awakenings between me not really having any self-worth or self-care or self-love. It kind of like transcended me into all of these healings, like this self-healing. So I got into self-healing work, like yoga teacher training. That opened me up a lot to my heart, deepening into that experience of where was my heart to begin with, because it obviously was like not with me in those times of need. Um, so going from there to finding myself on my healing journey of somatic work and deepening myself back into my body, because I was actually never in my body. My heart was a scary place for myself again, finding that rhythm that was there, that beating was too fast. It was almost as if like my life was beating too fast and just really scaring me away from being present within myself and my body and my mind and my thoughts. Um, so when I went into somatic work and self-healing work and nervous system work was when I really was able to come back into those parts of myself as well. But then that again brought up even the deeper things that were underneath. So it was like going towards the shamanic work, that deepening of that shadow work, the shadow sides of things. Because when we go into self-love, we're always like, oh, I just want my, like I want to feel worthy, I want to feel abundant, I want to feel peace. But something along those ways stopped us from that. And it's not like we didn't love ourselves, we just forgot how to. And what made us forget that? So those deeper, darker nights of the souls happening, over the years, over those years for me, really took me into those rememberings and those like the reminders for myself of why I was here in the first place, why my nervous system was overly agitated and hyperly activated, what I was living from, like trauma response to trauma triggers, you know, triggering those responses and those behaviors within myself. So literally, and then I had twins. I met my partner, and I had twins who are 4 now, but that again took me on to another rocky road of some more self-care and self-love. So, and deepening my my professional outlook into the somatic healing, the somatic therapy, transformative touch is what it's called professionally. But yeah.
It's so amazing to me. I remember the first practice session that we ever did. So for all of you, I met Marisa through Soul Teacher, and she is one of my soul sisters. And I remember the very first practice circle that we did, we were looking at each other's spirit guides. And I just remember being like, girl, you are earthy. It's just so earthy. And it was like there was no doubt in my mind that of course you would be drawn to this kind of work. It's so nurturing, it's so mothering, it's so sensitive and intuitive, and to hear your story that almost like every time you had a child, every time you needed to like delve into that like work of like being a human, which I feel like is so of the feminine moon side. Of course, you had these like revelations and these awakenings, and obviously like this very tough work, but like it actually like totally makes sense in my mind that of course you'd be like, and then I had a kid, and then I like had to do all this work, and then I had kids, and then I had to do all this work. It just rings so true in my mind for you. Looking back on it now, does that feel right? Does that feel like something that almost feels like that was like your like something that your soul like made a contract on?
Oh yeah, I definitely feel like there's so with my daughter, she's 15. I had her when I was 18. And so being a young mom, even just getting pregnant to begin with, that was really hard on my family. That was really hard on my own self, and still finishing out school. And again, so my daughter is half Black and half white. So she's like, you know, mixed. And that was another thing that opened my whole family up, the ancestry up, to opening their eyes and opening their perspective. And so it's been like a hard road just with that alone, that woke not just me up, but my whole family. And really, because, you know, having a daughter, it's so important for you to, as a mom, to have that strength and that courage yourself, and that self-worth and that self-love in line. I didn't at the time. And so she's kind of seen me grow along the ways as well. And now, like, bringing it back to the present day, I can see that she notices this strength and this courage within me, and how far I've grown and how far I've healed. It's that ancestral work is always happening. Even when we don't think it is, we are always doing the work from like this life and lifetimes before. That's really just opening people to a deeper awareness, but also a bigger perspective and a bigger way of looking at things, I feel. And so I feel like my intuition has always been like telling me, okay, you're the one that's here to like wake and shake people up almost. It's like you need to like do these different rebellious things almost. These things that like are so left, you know, and create that experience for not only yourself but others to be more open and stay open. Yeah.
It feels like throughout your life, in terms of your story, that just there's been so much surrender to who you are, to the plan that Source and you have co-created together. Does that feel truthful?
Yeah. And like you said, the earth element, like the earth mother, and the nature and the natural nurturing feelings that we get from the mother earth. It does feel really natural, and that I co-created with Source, and that listening deeply or more in tune with myself along the ways has helped me to see things in a different light, where I can look back at my life and see it in such a dark way. But for me, listening deeply means listening and living in with the light now. I mean, and just shedding the light and shining the light on those darker, deeper paths that we all walk, along this human experience. So I feel like that co-creation of can take you so many ways, and in so many ways it's almost I was just thinking of this the other day. It's like yin and yang, like that balance. There's a balancing. There's an equal amount of light and an equal amount of dark, and there's nothing wrong with those two parts. It's when you can come to the middle of it, that neutral state, and kind of find that togetherness, that how they come together in the end or along the way.
Do you find that working with your clients, that's a lot of the work that you're doing, is just helping them integrate or understand the two sides of everything? And I apologize, my audio is going crazy, as well as my Randy Rooster back there.
I heard it. I was like, I thought it was we were on a choo-choo train or something, and I said choo-choo train because of my kids, but like
I was like, train.
Yeah, I was like, okay, we're on a ride here and we're laying down the tracks. And that's definitely the type of work that I do with clients, is laying down those foundational tracks so that they can kind of see where they've come from and see how far they've come, and then so that they can go forwards. But what I work from is that neutral, that balance, that middle, that present state of being, because that's where we want to kind of live from mostly. We don't want to stay stuck in the past, and we don't want to stay too far in the future, because that's going to create all of these emotional experiences within our body and our mind and our spirit, right? It's so really landing with them where they are presently, and then kind of again, like seeing all of the resilience and all of the strength and the courage that it's taken them to get to where they are, so that we can kind of unload and uncouple like what's been maybe heavily traveled with.
It's also, I feel like, the hardest part of the work that we do, right? Of the like acknowledging ourselves and getting right with ourselves. It's easy to, and I shouldn't say easy, that's the wrong way to phrase it. How to put it into words. Acknowledging the changes within us that are the experiences in which we've been in. So for example, childhood trauma, dealing with that. I mean, you're coming to terms with how you internalized something somebody else said or did, right? In my own experience, I found that that's a lot easier for me to deal with than it is to deal with going inside and saying, how have I changed me? How have I hurt me? How are the things that I say about myself actually making me into the person that I am becoming or that I am trying to be. And that work, that inner work, that shadow work, that coming to terms with my present as an adult and acknowledging what I've done has been so hard and almost harder than all of that other stuff.
Yeah, it's almost as if I feel like I wrote a post about this just today, and I'm going to, because the body remembers in metaphors and poems and poetry, because it just speaks to the body, and the body kind of like tingles a little bit. I almost felt that sensation when you were speaking right there about your own experience. It's almost as if like those seeds have been planted, the experiences have been planted, and although they're in the dark, deep soil, right, they're still held by a mother and a father that allow us to grow. Even if the parents, the pair of people that we came into this life with are not, have caused this kind of experiences that may have hurt us or left us with wounding along the way. This is kind of like, for us, we can start to see those seeds again within the depths of us, the soil, the dark deepness of our beings, and allow them to regrow how we want them to this time. Even though, we can still acknowledge where those seeds came from, but that inner child work, that deepness, like that shadow work, we now have that choice and that chance to recreate it in the present.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me a lot of, I'm trying to think of their name and I'm blanking. It'll come to me and I'll probably be like, that's it. It reminds me a lot of this author that I read that speaks a lot to just coming back to self and just acknowledging it. And I think you said it beautifully. It's just so reminiscent. So like, as you were talking, I was like, oh my gosh, like I've read that in like multiple places, but just it resonated so clearly for me. In your work, what is it that you have found that helps kind of flip the switch a little bit, where you start seeing people start to get it? Is there a moment that tends to stick out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so like somatic therapy, somatic healing, somatic means in the body, or soma is living body. And so most of the times, what we've been taught is to go and talk about our feelings or our emotions, or the sensations that are coming up in the body, right? I don't understand why my heart is beating so fast. I'm just sitting on my couch is one thing, we've maybe talked about to somebody before. And so that coherence that we can't understand, it's kind of out of balance, those sensations that happen with just our mind, maybe not doing anything, but we're doing too much at the time. Somatic healing, so getting deep in, getting into the body and listening deeply, creating that space. Maybe we do a little bit of touch, self-touch or physical touch if you're in the office, or you can do this at any time by yourself as well. But like really deepening your sense of self and your place here on earth within your body, really grounding into that state of being with yourself, that awareness that comes up, and then noticing if any of those sensations are present. Maybe you feel a little bit, or you've had this ache in your right shoulder for a while, and it's now coming up because you've come into stillness, or you've come into silence, and you kind of can sense where it's at now, and you can kind of touch your hand there, place a hand there, maybe a little bit of massage, and then coming into like a meditative state and being your own guide, or having me guide the client into a visualization or an image or a memory may have been coming up already for them. Sometimes it's a color, sometimes it's just a temperature that starts that initial conversation, or the language of the body starts to come alive. It's almost as if you become your own intuitive and your own guide, right?
Yeah.
And because we all have those gifts, and it's like, I feel like my intuition was always getting me into this work because I never knew how magnificent this work could actually transform and alchemize what is underneath the surface. So like that ache in your right shoulder could, signal that memory or that image of a time when you were a child, or of a past life. I've seen this happen now, of a past life remembering that happens, that's been held within the body, because the body holds the memories. The mind, when we think of we need to talk and our thoughts are in our mind, we always go up to our head. That's why most of us associate headaches, right? Associate with headaches, yeah, sensations of headaches and things like that, aches in the head. Because we're always thinking it's all up here in our head. But all of our thoughts and all of our mind are in the whole body. And when we start to deny their existence, that's when they get louder and louder and louder. And they can eventually turn into physical ailments. Mm-hmm. So my part of the work is to try and alleviate that, from happening, alleviate it from getting more physically crystallized within the body, the physical body.
That makes a lot of sense for sure. And I'm sure that you've come across quite a few clients that are just the fact of touching themselves and having it be a very intimate thing for them. I just am thinking of how often do we associate touch with touching someone else, and that being an intimate thing, but ignoring ourselves, or like we get up and we don't take the time to stretch and really acknowledge being inside of our own bodies and how amazing it is, what it does for us, and not acknowledging that, it without us asking it to, without having to say, hand move, foot move, leg move. And it just does it. That the mind body, brain body, I guess I should say, connection is so strong that, and we just don't even acknowledge it. They're like, yep, that's what happens. And it has to be so affirming for you to watch people as you're like, you know what, like touch the shoulder that hurts, touch the leg that hurts, give thanks for what it's doing for you anyway, despite being in pain, and watching people go, oh my God, my body is amazing. That has to be just such a wonderful and fulfilling and like life affirming in some ways for some people. I'm sure that some people's stories and experiences must really rock you, especially being intuitive and being able to see a lot more than what people think that we can. Like, I think of the fact that we can go into the Akashic records and that we can see people's past lives and we can see the trauma, right? We can look at their chakra centers and we can see their trauma, whether they tell us or not, a lot of the times. And I know that for listeners, that may sound a little intrusive, but obviously, like, you're coming to us, you're asking us to, we're not reading people typically just out on the street, but to watch that progress, to watch people fully or start to connect with themselves has to just be such a beautiful thing day to day.
Yeah, and like you touched on the warming parts of the work that I do. So like when we say touch, yeah, like you said, we always think of like touching another person or like our hands touching something else. But how often are we touched inside by someone's words or someone's gestures or like something that touches our heart? You can't literally touch a heart, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
so like my prescription always after meeting with someone and working with them is to really for them to just embody the work, really to just get into nature and naturally be with themselves more, because like you said, it's just it really is, it's hard work, right? It's hard work when we've ran away or we've, because I work a lot with the nervous system as well. There's those different states that we can be stuck and trapped within. So it's like funny if we're like fighting inside or in that fight or flight, we're like fighting with ourselves or we're running away from ourselves. If we're in that lower state of, disconnection, disassociation, we're again fleeing from ourselves or we're just really disconnected from everything. Um, so really just allowing people to take what they can, and be more with themselves and their body and the mind and the spirit as well. I mean, it's all interconnected. We cannot disconnect from any part of that anymore. I just feel like it's so important. And especially with the heart, I mean, like just getting into the heart and like noticing how far and how moved you can go and how open and led you can be from the heart space is so crucial anymore,
Mm-hmm.
especially with technology and social
Right.
media.
And you mentioned you said something in there that triggered something for me of that we can't anymore. What are your thoughts on looking forward? I know that as like soul sisters, and we're in a group that like talks about like the future a lot, whether it's extraterrestrials coming down and new earth and all these things, and these are all things that we don't necessarily have to go into, but just I'm curious, what are your thoughts on what the future looks like, even 10-20 years now, like in our lifetimes, like what in this particular lifetime that we're experiencing, what are your thoughts on that? How you say that we can't live like this, where do you think that we're going?
Yeah, so I feel like we're moving more into a technology world, right? Where we're being kind of forced to be online. But that doesn't mean that our physical selves or the physical environments we live in has to go offline, right? So when we get into like the aliens and the galactic beings and all of that and the new earth and this and that, I kind of like to stay neutral myself presently, but what I see a future into the future, I'm trying to make up words now for it, but is really just
I am all for the Marisa-isms. I really am.
okay, because they might come out. Sometimes I'm just like, all right, just take your rebellious ass and start a dictionary. I don't know. But seriously, in all seriousness, so like looking into the future, I just see us dropping more into our bodies because we are waking up. A lot of us are here waking up and really starting to take care of our bodies and our minds and connecting more with spirit and that internal GPS that we all have. It's almost as if if we talked about this type of stuff like 2 years ago, it would have been crazy. We would have looked, people
Absolutely.
would be like, what is she talking about? Or what are they talking about? But we can just see kind of, it's almost as if it's like a rainbow forming, this extra light, all of the lights blending together, coming together, like that eagle, that condor prophecy. It's just unity. I can kind of see us shifting into a more togetherness and coming into, coming back into the earth time, where we know we need to be here on earth. So we're going to connect with what feels most natural and organic, because there are a lot of things that are going to be shed, and you know, there's going to be a lot more light involved. But again, finding that balance of that light and that dark, and not connecting with that darkness, because it's going to always exist. I believe in a balance and a unity that needs to happen, so that we can find ourselves still being here on earth and being in peace with life.
I hear you for sure. I watched the show Black Mirror. I don't know if you know it. It's brilliant. It's based out of the UK, so it's very, you know, like it can be dry humor, but but really what it is like when they say Black Mirror, like the screen of your device basically before you turn it on.
Yeah.
And so every episode is different, but they all talk about some form or fashion of how technology can like play a role. And so the writers of this show have really gone so much further in looking at the different ways that technology can be integrated and affect our lives, from memory retrieval and bringing back loved ones that have died, and creating havoc and hurting people and things like that. And it really makes me think of what you're describing of we're getting to a time where there will never be a reverting back to a completely naturalistic way of life where everybody's got, you know, a home garden and they're tilling the soil by hand. I mean, we may go to a place where we truly appreciate the land. I hope we do. I hope that we honor the land and honor our planet, because it is our home. And while we may venture into space at some point and have that technology, I hope that while we do that, we also realize the beauty that is planet Earth, and that it has so much more to give, to give to us, to give to others. But while we have those gardens, right, it's probably going to be a little robot that like weeds it, you know, like, you know, and we're going to have to find a way to integrate, right, and find that balance that you're talking about. Like, if we want to say that, you know, the earth is that light side, and the technology is the dark side, that it doesn't have to be good versus evil. It can just be light and dark, and that we can absolutely find this balance where we're respectful of both. And I see that a lot in how many of us light workers start our businesses. We do start them online, right? And we do have where we're on Zoom calls or whatnot. And it rings true for me that, like, if we can find the balance, right? If we can find a way to bridge the distance and pull people's energy forward for us while we're on a Zoom call with somebody, it really is like really kind of the start of the perfect metaphor for how we can find this beautiful middle.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it really kept reminding me of like that blanket that we first talked about with the calmness that came over us at the beginning. It's that quantum effect, right? That quantum feeling. We can sense that because it's energy. We are energy, more energetic beings. But there's like this vibrational resonance, or this frequency resonance. I guess it's called the Schumann Residence is what it's called. It's almost as if it's Earth's blanket, and it lays over all of us beings here on Earth, all of the living creatures and everything. And what's affecting it is the technology, and is like that computerized evolution that's happening right now. But that just means it's bringing us back to the nature, and grounding ourselves into nature can really allow that to settle back into the earth. So again, like when you're saying this, coming back into the balance, it's almost coming back into sync with ourselves and our bodies, as well as Earth's natural rhythm and frequency. That already holds us. So there is nothing wrong with us going more online, or, that becoming a thing, because obviously it is going to be, bigger than we can even imagine, because we're dreamers and we're going to dream so big. And so things are going to happen. Again, we're all here as the light workers to remind people to connect with where we are in our place here on earth, and that's all it's going to be about.
Yes. I so appreciate too the calmness with which you describe that, because I think that one of the things that we're seeing even today is just so much fear, and that fear being directed at everything, not just, not just vaccines or not just pandemics or whatever. It literally is like absolutely everything from the smallest thing of I can't make my cup of coffee to this very large, like, I don't know if there's a God, type of thing, or I don't know if there is source, and it runs the gamut. And I just feel like we have to, it is our job as the light workers, right? I feel like this is the one thing that I keep bringing up to people, and it feels so revolutionary, like it feels very bold to some people, and yet to me I'm like, this is just so practical. Like it's about figuring out how to let go of that fear and operate out of love, operate out of the opposite of that, and remembering that it's not, that life is not the opposite of death. Birth is the opposite of death. Life is eternal. And therefore if life is eternal, life is the middle. So how do we operate in life and not go with fear as our first gut instinct? And I feel like for us light workers, and maybe you can speak to this from your own like personal aspect, knowing now that, after hearing your story of coming out of the different relationships and trying times that you had, of like, what for you was kind of, I know that you've talked in many modalities, but maybe you can speak on your favorite one of moving you out of fear and using it as your like tool to make your choices out of love instead of out of fear.
Yeah. And so that's like a very loaded question, but I have like such a long answer. I will like shorten it a little bit, but so fear has anchored me into existence for a very long time.
Hasn't it, for all of us?
Yeah, right. We can be anchored in with blame, shame, those heavier, dense emotions, which are just energy. Okay. It's like, I really just want to start looking at the emotions that are in our body. Those states where we get triggered, and these similar and familiar emotions arise within us, because feelings are like fleeting, right? They're like, they come in, they roll in and out. But if the system doesn't or isn't able to complete those feelings, what happens is, because emotions are led or follow those feelings, those emotions are the ones that get stuck and trapped, or feel stagnant within the body, and create that density or that heaviness. So it's like I was pretty much born with fear holding me and grounding me in. Now, when you ask what was my greatest and most healing medicine out of all of that, I guess it would be finding again my body and anchoring in with my body in the ground. So grounding instead of being filled with heaviness of fear and blame and shame and guilt and and all of those, again, those denser energies, but allowing myself to feel them fully, to cry and allow that release of all those deeper emotions to arise. And really, I would have to say that self-love and connecting back with my own heart, allowing my heart to anchor me in, allowing my heart to find the ground instead of my fears and instead of those heavier emotions that we all tend to have, that we drag and carry through life with, right? And like, another medicinal, well, the medicine that was for me was cacao. That really helped me, like the spirit of cacao, and that's like really helped me open and lead with my own heart. I mean, I feel like that and the self-love work, the self-depth work, and healing with my inner child a lot was like what pulled me up out, but also grounded me deeper in. It wasn't the emotions or the fear any longer that I needed to keep holding on to, so that I was here on earth and I could travel through life,
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned to the cacao, and that is such, I mean, for anybody who's listening, cacao is the beginning of chocolate, it is typically in the States very highly processed. But what you're talking about using is basically the raw, unprocessed material that has all of like the fats in it, all of the things. It's as unprocessed as you can get it. Basically, it's still you can still get it in blocks or you can get it in powder, but this is really kind of the essence of the seed.
Yeah.
And it is such a beautiful, I think, way to integrate coming into yourself and doing love work, self-love work, heart work, and connecting you to the earth. I mean, it comes from a place that's nothing but earth. I feel like when we think of where cacao comes from, it's like the densest forests, and we think of these beautiful birds and stuff, but we have, through human history, associated chocolate with love, with intimacy, with the heart. I mean, Valentine's Day alone sells billions of dollars worth of chocolate. And so it's amazing that there is a form that takes out the commerciality, right? And brings you back to the very essence of plant medicine. I know that a lot of people think plant medicine, they think ayahuasca, peyote, but like this is like plant medicine, right? Like,
Yeah, like herbs, like
yeah,
natural herbal remedies or plants, and they're medicine, they're medicinal. So
right.
yeah, it's gotten a bad rap, some of it,
It's I think I'll have to put a little recipe that you've given us of the cacao, so that people can try it, because I feel like it's just such a beautiful thing to use, and will just change a lot of hearts, I think, around plant medicine, but also just like chocolate and loving themselves. And I think that there's something different too. Like, even if you're not gonna perform an entire cacao ceremony, right? Which, if you haven't done it, I highly recommend y'all try it. Cacao ceremonies are amazing. But simply just, making yourself a cup of cacao and saying, thank you for nourishing me. Thank you for bringing me back to my heart, and drinking it and then going about your day. I think that can like change so much.
Yeah, setting those intentions. I mean, I almost look at my time with the spirit of cacao as many soul retrievals and parts for my heart coming back to myself. That's truly how I see it now. I'm like, wait a second. Was that what was happening? Was it just filling holes within my heart that had been there, from hurt and pain and grief and things like that can happen? Absolutely. Now I believe it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned soul retrievals, and this is something that I'm super fascinated in. We've learned it's a very shamanic ritual. It's a healing that both of us do within our practice. There are a lot of different ways to do it, but essentially like brings about the same results. Why don't you tell our watchers here, our viewers here, what a soul retrieval is and how you use it and how you go about doing it in your practice?
Yeah, so I use the use of a rattle or another instrument. I sometimes use the drum, but I like to do a little bit of the somatic work in the beginning to kind of deepen yourself and ground your body and your physical self so that those parts can come back to
Right.
something.
We're like, we don't know where you are, and that's why we're lost.
Where are you? So this is just another way or form of my individual work that I do first. And what happens is I'll either ask the client to kind of get into a meditative state themselves, go through a visualization and imagery, and then from there I'll like play an instrument or whatever happens. Sometimes I don't feel called to play any instruments. I'll just play music, healing, like binaural beats or solfeggial beats. And then what I do is kind of, I'll either see if I travel on my horse, my spirit horse Tundra, and then I have a spirit, my power animal is Hoover and Owl. And I'll see if they want to travel with me to the underworld, or sometimes we go to the upper world into the Akashic records, and we can go into the Akashic records room for the client and see the book and ask for what part needs to be returned right now. Or you can just kind of probe with the questions yourself or with the client. And so from there, it's kind of almost, if I'm talking with the client while I'm doing a soul retrieval, I'm asking them, who are you? What do you look like? Are you a girl or are you a boy? What are you wearing? What does the world look like? Just probing and questioning those different questions while this client is in a meditative state, or if they're like not feeling okay with being in a meditation, again, just asking them questions or me doing it by myself. Again, that always happens. Sometimes some people aren't, they don't feel safe enough to travel or journey along to those past parts or past lives of themselves. And from there, just I use the guides and the spirit and great spirit to retrieve what parts of themselves that they need back, so that they can embody wholeness and fullness and their truest, most highest and held good self, so that they can take that into the present moment and forward with them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You brought up a good point that this work is highly personal. It's very taxing emotionally. It sounds easy on one hand. It's incredibly hard. The bringing back pieces of yourself is something that takes a lot of honesty and a lot of trust. Um, and so I very much resonate with what you were saying about some people just aren't ready to access that. Some people aren't ready to have those things be integrated into themselves back in. And I mean, I could talk about like the essence of like of one's soul and for forever. It's such a large topic, and maybe part two, but it is definitely something that I highly encourage anybody, if you feel ready to do it. It is something that has been profoundly helpful for myself personally. Being able to integrate the strengths of, you know, pieces of me, and to bring those back to just feel more whole. And we do, I mean, we lose pieces of ourselves almost every day. And that brings me to the topic of like shedding and healing. And I know that this is something you're greatly familiar with. This is something that, you know, we've already kind of touched on a little bit. The getting to the root of ourselves, right? How do you explain to your clients that this is not like a one-stop shop?
Whew, yeah. Well, I can either tell them through personal experience. I've felt like I've lived and died many lives within this same one, that I've been, you know, through many dark nights of the souls and things like that. And the shedding and the purging, it's always, or it always feels so much more comforting when I hear someone else experience or has experienced something similar to the sensations or the feelings or the experiences that I've felt, going through this awakening or this just just life, in general. But the shedding, I mean, sometimes we aren't ready to lose and shed those parts of ourselves, but as it's shedding and it's leaving our skin, sometimes, you know, will start to break out. Things will come to the surface, and we don't often want to look at those things, but that's when we really do have to face them and look at them. When that's like when it's on your skin, you're like, okay, what's going on? Hello, I see you, right? Because most of those parts of us that we need to shed and need to kind of move through and forward to get to the other side of, you know, a part of ourselves that wants to fully show up in that higher state. It's almost as if we have a hard time parting with that, and that's where we kind of can stop, that healing and that movement forward, and that, I'm trying to think here of the word I'm trying to use, but it's not coming to mind. But also, you know, just like having self-acceptance and allowing and surrendering. I think you said that before, like that surrendering to the experience of human life, of you being a human being here on earth, is so deeply, like, that is the deepest gratitude you can have for yourself and your life. And really just tuning into all of that. Why is this happening? Why do I need to let this go? Why is this part of me not working for my lifestyle? Or why am I not feeling like I'm able to work in this life, of or line of work? Maybe it's a career, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's your family, maybe, you know, it can be anything. But why is this not working anymore? Why is chaos or turmoil or inner, you know, those are all things for us to learn and grow through and experience. And again, just take what we can in the very moment and accept and allow and surrender, to the experience.
Yes. You brought up a good point of that. As you do the healing, as you shed a lot of these things, it comes out in your skin. And I know a lot of the times I would wake up after a healing or something and be like, what the shit? Like, there's a huge zit on my face. And and you know, I equate it to exercise. Like when you really start committing to exercise, right? And that first like year, some people like myself, it was like a year of my body basically like purging out everything, the sugars, the toxins, all of the things. And it was coming out of my pores. And I was like going to my esthetician going, I don't understand. Like, why is this happening to me? And I feel like going through this process of continual healing, like every once in a while, like I'll know when a real big one came through, because the next day, inevitably, I either like feel like crap because, you know, my stomach hurts, or I've got a headache, or I'm super tired, or I have a physical breakout or something. And it's so accurate. It is your body literally saying, get out, because this no longer serves me. This is not for me, and let me release it. And so I just remind people that, and as of course, as I say this, a butterfly like just flew across my window, that it is a transforming process, but it is forever continual. And I think that is the hardest part for some people. You know, I have to tell my clients, you know what, this isn't, you can get a clarity reading from me, you can get a healing from me, but let me tell you, you know, you're gonna end up coming back. You're gonna come back, or to, you know, just for, you know, more advice, for something else that you need, because this is never ending. And I remember mentioning this to another soul sister of ours, that, you know, it's about coming to terms with the fact that this is a forever process. This is never going to end. This is always going to be something that you have to continue to do. And that is hard for people. That is really hard for people to understand, that this work, that your body is always going to need work. But that's okay. That's the reason to live, is to constantly improve. And it is, you will improve. It is an improvement.
Yeah, going from survival to thriving, you know, like I can just think of it, an experience now of if you've been waiting to heal yourself, and it's been you're 25, you're 30, right? And this is your first time having an experience with a healer, or, you know, receiving some type of body work or body healing. And you experience like this emotional release there, you know, you're feeling great, you're lighting up from the experience, that massage or whatever you've had done. You feel so relaxed. And then, like you said, the next day, you're noticing all of these things coming up and arising to the surface. And this reminds me of a time where a client said they had the most rage, the most angry righteous rage moment the next day. And it happened in through the next day. But then after that day, it subsided a little bit more, and they felt really light. And they wanted to know, why did the healing or the session make me feel so angry and rageful, or full of rage? They said, I felt so angry at nothing. And I said, well, this is the first time you're experiencing a release and a completion of an event or an experience of something, some kind of wound, or, you know, that has been allowed now to be freed up from the body, from the mind and the spirit. And now it just wants to express itself fully and complete that process. That is what it needed to do. The more we allow ourselves to complete and feel and fully allow that to process and purge, shed, whatever from our system, as long as we have that belief and that faith, that and that hope, you know, that we are moving forward and releasing what no longer serves us.
Yes.
That's all we need.
Yes. It's incredibly healing to acknowledge all of those feelings that we've never acknowledged or pushed aside. And I think it's such a beautiful way for us to heal, is for those things to come out in a very passionate and realistic way. Like nothing, you know, I think of the quote, like, nothing worth it is easy. Like, you know, if you're gonna do something well, like, do it well, but that also means like you're gonna probably have to take a lot of time. So it very much like resonates for me that is absolutely true. And for my own self, I remember in Soul Teacher, like saying it in office hours with our mentor, going like, I have been up leveling like every week. And I am like turning into like the biggest wench, like just the biggest bitch you've ever seen, because I just like revert to my worst self for like 24 hours. And she's like, well, you can always say like, you know, you can heal with grace. And I so appreciated like the advice, but I ended up the next time I took her advice. I told my guides, you know, and I want to like up level with like a little bit more evenness. And let me tell you, that was the longest week of like me being like complaining I have ever had. And from that moment on, I basically was like, nope. I like told my guides, I was like, I'll be a bitch for 24 hours. Just get me through it. Just get me through it. I don't want to.
It had to come out some way, right? It was like, I'm coming out and I'm letting go. Don't let go of me, right? Like that.
Instead of like one big like epic release, it was like this slow release of like anxiety. And I was just like, I can't do this. Nah, okay, I get it. We're just all gonna let it come out. It's all just gonna come out. It's fine. People will know. And so now it's funny. My mom can like tell. She's like, are you up leveling? It's basically like the light worker version of like, are you PMSing?
Right? Exactly. Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh, that is perfect.
So for anybody watching, if you see a person, if you see a light worker and he or she is just not on their game, it feels like we're probably up leveling. It's just like
that's it. That's truly it. And I just say like, you know, don't hurt any, like, did you hurt anyone? Did you really there's always time to repair, you know?
Yes.
Clear, cancel, delete that shit, right?
Right.
You know, so it's like, if it, you know, is in your highest and greatest good, I'm sure that it will be in the most healthy revolutionary transformational alchemizing way that it needs to be done. And that's truly how I want us to all like start to look at our anxiety, our panic, our anger, our rage, or whatever comes up. And it's up leveling. Okay, it is up leveling us. It's taking us away from those darker, denser energies that have held on to us, or we've held on for so long. So
yes. And it goes back to exactly what you were saying before of like, you know what, everything is meant to be felt, and they are emotions, and they will come and they will go away. It, you know, I think people get it mixed up when they are like, I just want to be happy, as if happiness is a destination. And I have to remind people, happiness, is not a destination. It's an emotion. It comes and it goes. It's like hunger, you know? And so you can't have where you are sitting here thinking, well, I'm gonna have where I'm constantly like worried about, pardon my like roommates coming in and out. You guys are seeing the behind the scenes of my life. You can't worry about like trying to get somewhere. Like, I promise you, like, you do the work is really what I end up saying to people. Do the work, and that happiness will come because it's a byproduct of doing the work. But you have to let those other emotions come in and give them the space they deserve. It's not those darker emotions serve a purpose as well. They remind us of lessons that are essential to learn. And I think so much of our culture, particularly in the US, is about repression and about repressing these, quote, darker emotions. And like you were saying before, it all just gets stuck in our bodies. It's energy. And, you know, like, you know, Newton's laws say, like, energy just transforms. It doesn't, you can't destroy it. So where does it go? It just sits in us.
Yeah. 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 I'm fully receiving in those messages. I mean, it's definitely all of those reminders when those, again, we're bringing to light the dense and the darkness, and again, trying to bring that into balance. Because when we do, we don't have such a hard time with those emotions that come arising, right? We're not like, oh, I'm so mad that I'm mad, right? Like,
Mm,
but that doesn't even
right?
make sense, right? Like, I'm angry because I'm crying, no, like we can fully turn on the light switch and be like, oh, I'm crying because I'm upset. I'm crying because I'm angry. Well, what's underneath that angry? Like, sadness, sorrow, grief, things like that. And then we can move from there. It's, yeah, we don't need to look at the denser, darker energies that get stuck and trapped and stagnant within us any longer as, oh, there's something wrong with me, right? Why do I feel like this? We can look at them as an opportunity and a reminder that I feel dense and I feel heavy and I feel tight and I feel tense and I feel, ugh, like I'm gonna burst in from, as a bubble. And we can take that and we can do something about it. We can choose and make that choice to um, free
Yes.
ourselves.
Yes. And that is a great point to bring up about choice that,
Mhm.
I heavily believe in free will, and I heavily believe in that we have choice, and that consequences are a part of that. And one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite book series is that everything has a price. Everything has a price, good or bad, dark or light, it all has a price. And you have to be very aware of whether or not you want to pay that price. And I think people don't take that into consideration enough. And I think that's why what you do in your work is so important and impactful, because a lot of the price that we pay isn't in what happens to other people. It's not about what's out there, it's about what's in here. And um, when I think that if more people realize that the price that they had to pay came out of their own flesh and their own mental health and their own soul, their own self, I think they would be a lot more careful about what it is that they're doing to themselves, whether it's saying no or yes to that fifth Cosmo, or the extra donut or the extra portion. Those are just things that people complain about every day, right? But it can also be as, what about what I'm going to say to my partner?
Mhm.
They didn't do the dishes, and the gut instinct is to be like, why are you such a slob? I told you, pick this up. you know think about, is that actually going to be the best option? Is that really going to get you to where you want to be? Is that price something you're willing to pay? And how does that price come out of me? You lose a piece of yourself when you turn your anger out to others. And I think we don't think about that as a society, as a human species. I don't think that we think about that very, very much, if at all.
Yeah, yeah. Our relationship with ourself is really a reflection of our world outwardly. And what you discussed right there, I mean, it's just like it's so important. That relationship that we have with ourselves does cost something, right? Our self-worth. How are we holding our boundaries with others? And how are we reflecting how we feel about ourselves with our most personal um with the most personal people in relationship with us, like our family and our closest friends? And how is that showing up externally for us? I mean, when we're not feeling good and that we are worthy enough to say no, we're going to do more than we want to, than we feel like we can. But we're going to push past that because we feel we need to make it ourselves worthy enough to be in relationship with a specific person or something like that. kind of got off track a little bit there.
No, I am following you. It is, you're right. You're so right. The relationship with ourselves, it's something we don't foster well enough. And it is absolutely one of the like most beautiful things. It's one day I will make you teach me what you know. Because it's so beautiful to me. And I just, there's something so wholesome about you, so calm about you. And I knew it the first time that we met. And I just so appreciate everything that you are and everything that you do. And so, I mean, gosh, I know that we're running out of time here, but is there anything, else that you would be so kind as to leave us with? I know we've talked about pretty much the gamut of things
Yeah.
today, but
Yeah. No, Abby, it's been a pleasure and like an honor to be with you in this time that we've shared together. I'm like so grateful. And this conversation has been like so awakening for myself in this just very moment. To talk with someone who feels so similarly to myself and feels a lot of things too. Going back to the relationship with ourselves and how it promotes, ourselves and how we show and reflect in life. Um, Maybe the next time you're choosing to drink or eat or nourish your body with something, take a pause, a sacred pause for yourself in those moments and reflect on the relationship you're having right now with this food or this nourishment that you're about to fill with, fill into your body. Is it high energy? Is it high vibrational? Is it high love? Is it like, is it love? Am I feeding myself love right now? Or am I feeding something inside of myself that I don't understand? Reflecting and mirroring, just that, again, that relationship with the self, and how our personal relationships are created surrounding that relationship that we have with ourselves. Am I being kind to myself and kind to others? Or if they're, am I being unkind to myself and being kind to another, right? All of those reflections, and there's mirrors with self is, and that relationship starts with ourself and our heart and the love that we have for ourselves.
I love that so much. Take a sacred pause. I
Yeah.
love that. And I think that is something that is so simple that we can all take away. So, friends, thank you so much for joining us. You can find all of the places to follow Marisa Sage down in the description below. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so honored and privileged to call this beautiful soul my soul sister. She is fabulous, and please book a session with her. She has so much to give and so much wisdom to share. This is just a taste, I promise you. So go and check her out. And as always, we will see you back for the next Breath of Life conversations. Bye, friends. Bye, Marisa.
Bye.